When a person feels lost in life, what actions can we take to help them find the right path? Currently, there are no definite maps to navigate difficult life situations. Often, a kindred spirit or a truly compassionate person can serve as a guiding light for those seeking their direction. John was always searching for something, always thinking deeply. There was no peace in his heart. He lived alone, never knowing his parents. They had abandoned him when he was just a child and left for what they thought was a better life. It may have worked for them, but not for John. He was raised by his elderly grandmother, who passed away last year. Now John didn't know how to move on with his life. He had no one left. He had never looked for his mother and father. Why would he? If they didn't need him, why should he worry about them? What kind of relatives are they anyway? Blood ties might matter, but in his case, they meant nothing. His grandmother, Martha, had been his mother and father, and they had lived peacefully together. Martha was a kind and wise woman who raised John with a soft heart, found joy in the little things, and was curious about the world around him. This is exactly the kind of person John became. John got a good profession and stayed in his small hometown as a young professional. His salary was not much, but it was enough. He renovated Martha's old house and lived there alone. He didn't have any close friends, but he wasn't unfriendly. If the townspeople asked him for help, he willingly gave it, often expecting nothing in return. One summer, a group of students came to the village to do a graduation project. Among them was a girl named Emily. They met at a dance at a local club. Emily took a liking to John, and so did he. They started dating. Although Emily seemed demure, John was her first, so the time they spent together seemed special to him. When the student project came to an end and it was time to leave, Emily asked John to come visit her and wrote her address on a piece of paper, promising that she would wait for him. John was so afraid of losing the address that he memorized it by heart. A month later, he had a few days to spare and decided to visit Emily. When he arrived in town, he easily found her street and house. Emily greeted him with joy. "John, finally, I've been waiting for you for so long, you can't even imagine." "I have some news," Emily said. "I don't know if this will make you happy, but I'm pregnant." She looked at him intently. John was stunned. He hadn't expected this. Emily was his first, and the thought that there might be children from these encounters hadn't fully dawned on him yet. Emily noticed his reaction. "You're not happy, are you? Tell me the truth." "Emily, this is just so sudden." "I need to gather my thoughts," he replied. "There's no time to think." "I have to think not only about myself, but about our baby." At that moment, a woman entered the room. It was Emily's mother, Mrs. Margaret. "How do you do, young man?" "So you're John," she said, giving him a long look. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, feeling awkward. "So what are your plans?" "Raise the baby together, or leave him with me and go your separate ways." Her words hurt John deeply. He suddenly realized that just as his parents had abandoned him, he could do the same to his child. The thought horrified him. "No," John said firmly. "Emily, I want us to raise this child together. Will you marry me?" Emily's eyes lit up. "Yes, I will." Soon they were married. John moved his new wife to a village where the air was cleaner and life was quieter. They promised each other that after the baby was born, they would move back to the city to live with Margaret, who offered to help with the baby. Sometimes, Emily stayed home, and John visited his mother-in-law to help her with the household chores. Margaret began to ask him for help more often, whether it was moving furniture or fixing things. John, always ready to help, didn't hesitate. Over time, he grew to love his mother-in-law as she grew to love him. One evening, after working late into the night, assembling a new kitchen set for Margaret, she offered to stay the night instead of driving back to the village in the dark. Exhausted, John agreed. Barely making it to bed, he fell into a deep sleep. In the middle of the night, John felt someone lying next to him and gently stroking him. When he opened his eyes, he saw Margaret. Startled, he jumped up, but she pulled him to her again. "John, why are you so shy?" "I was cold alone in my bed, and I came to you." "Don't chase me away," she said softly. John was puzzled. His thoughts were racing. How had this happened? Was this something that had been building up since the day they met? Margaret's warm hands continued to stroke him gently, and soon John found himself enjoying it. Not having much experience in such matters, he followed her lead. Margaret, being more mature and experienced, led him with ease. That night, they did what could not be done. Afterward, as they lay side by side, tired but satisfied, Margaret broke the silence. "I'm getting a new washing machine next week. Can you hook it up?" John, still catching his breath, nodded. "Sure. I'll come over after work." Margaret smiled and ran her finger along his chest. "Good. Why don't we do this again before you leave?" "I really enjoyed your strong hands." John didn't hesitate. He leaned in, and they started again.